From Troy Public Radio, this is In Focus, and I'm Carolyn Hutchison. You may have thought Elvis Presley's hit record, Hound Dog, was his alone. But the song was first recorded by Big Mama Thornton, a native of Alabama's Wiregrass. Mike McKenzie of Alabama Public Television introduces Robert Clem, documentary filmmaker who's back in town with his new film about Big Mama Thornton for its premiere on APT tomorrow at 8 p.m. And you're hearing Big Mama Thornton sing her hit song thanks to the 1970 WGBH Boston Public Television archives. Mike McKenzie, welcome back to Troy Public Radio from Alabama Public Television.
Oh, well, I'm so happy to be with you, Carolyn. I'd always love to come talk with you.
We often see you on the air, so what is your job technically at APTV?
Technically, I'm the Director of Programming and Public Information, so always trying to spread that information, including how people can support Alabama Public Television. We've got to have support for Troy Public Radio as well.
We are sitting here with a distinguished guest in the Troy Public Radio studios in Montgomery. Mike, I want you to introduce our guest.
I'm so pleased to introduce Robert Clem, the distinguished filmmaker who's done so many great films that we've broadcast. Bob did our Alabama Black Belt Blues, Sink the Alabama a couple of years ago, and quite a few other great stories. We've done 6 or 8 of your films over the years, Bob. We're really excited about the latest program, which we're going to premiere tomorrow night, which is Big Mama Thornton, Alabama Kid.
Bob, it is so good to have you back here in your native state.
Oh, I come back here quite often, actually. But yes, I'm glad to be back here, too.
How did you get interested as a filmmaker in the story of the Wiregrass blues singer, Big Mama Thornton?
Well, I've been working on stories about Alabama blues for a few years now. Plus, I also did a film on gospel music called How They Got Over. And that included the Blind Boys of Alabama. But in terms of coming down to the Wiregrass, well, I have been down here, as I say, recording some blues singers before. And it so happened that Peggy Hare, who was one of the wonderful producers at Alabama Public Television, I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, suggested Big Mama Thornton as a good subject because she was a great blues singer, historically one of the best, but really little was known about her in the public. She'd been kind of forgotten, although she did the original version of Hound Dog, so in some ways she was famous because Elvis Presley made that into a cash cow. She had made very little on the project.
Yeah, Bob, I read somewhere that she only made $500 from that song, and look at what Elvis got.
Well, this has to do with the fact that the singers don't usually get money out of a recording. It's the people who own the publishing rights who get the money, people who write the song. So Mike Stoller and Jerry Lieber, very famous songwriters, they were teenagers when they wrote this song, though. They immediately knew it was a hit when they recorded this with Big Mama. They wrote the song specifically for her. Her name was Willie Mae, by the way, at that time. They just said that she seems like someone who would tell a man who was living with her to get out, you ain't nothing but a hound dog. They just sensed that that was something she would say. So that's why the song was written for her. So when Elvis sang that, he was singing to a basset hound. And he talked about you never caught a rabbit. So the song was completely Bowdlerized by Elvis Presley. According to Willie Mae Thornton, after he became famous, somebody suggested, why don't you do a joint concert with Willie Mae Thornton, Big Mama, because she made the song famous, and he refused. Elvis Presley, for me, is a villain of this piece. Now, other people can claim he's great, but I just think you're right. She got $500 because she was under contract with a man named Don Roby, who's another great character in the film, by the way, out of Houston, Texas. But getting back to your original subject about the Wiregrass.
Of course, Ayrton claims Big Mama Thornton as one of their own. I've read that she was like 14 years old when she got, quote, discovered. She used to sit on a bench outside the Greyhound bus station, which may be turned, as I understand it, into a museum saluting these blues artists, including Big Mama. There is a historical marker thanks to the Wiregrass Blues Society and other people who believe that she should be on the map of the greats here in our state.
I mean, she already is on the map. I think I've seen her name everywhere. But it's great that Ayrton and the Wiregrass are seeing fit to build a memorial to her and a museum. That just emphasizes that that's where she's from. Her father was a preacher in Ayrton, Alabama. And according to people in the film, she learned a lot of her technique. She loved gospel music. She heard the choir at the church. She heard her father preach. She was inspired by all that. She learned how to phrase and how to sing. That's what they say. So I think that her roots are clearly in Ayrton, Alabama, in that church where her father was a preacher.
Did you get the idea that she sort of helped usher in rock and roll with Hound Dog and then later Ball and Chain that became the signature song for Janis Joplin?
Well, that's a very big subject. I mean, the roots of rock and roll. I think clearly one of the main stems, the root of rock and roll, is blues, then rhythm and blues. Hound Dog was a rhythm and blues song or novelty song, like they would call it. And that's what they were doing in Texas at the time. So rhythm and blues did evolve into rock and roll. Most of the white rock and rollers were basically covering songs that were written by black R&B or like Chuck Berry or people like that who did break through. But yeah, that's where rock and roll came from, although there were other strands, of course, country music, rockabilly, other things.
But you're telling us she was a pioneer.
Well, yeah, I think, first of all, she was a pioneer in terms of going from Ayrton to Montgomery to see Sammy Green's Hot Harlem Review at their show in Montgomery. It was part of the Chitlin Circuit. It was a black theater, black audience, and a woman named Diamond Teeth Mary, this is the story goes, saw her on the street on a garbage truck working, and I guess heard her singing and said, come on down and audition for Sammy. This is kind of a fairy tale story, really. She went down and auditioned, and they hired her. Out of all the people that were there, they hired her. She took off with them. It's like joining the circus, right? There was just a group of people who were traveling around, dancers, singers, comedians. And I think Little Richard was a part of that entourage for a while. But they were based in Atlanta. They went all over the South. They went down to Florida. They went through Georgia many times and other southern states. So she did that for, I think, close to a decade, late 30s into... in 1948, she jumped ship and stayed in Houston, and that's where she started with Don Roby.
I read that she appeared in Harlem at the Apollo Theater, brought the house down. Is that what flashed her national reputation?
That's interesting. No, she was under contract with Don Roby, and there was a band leader named Johnny Otis. He was a Greek-American who loved black music, and he took her on tour with other black entertainers. And they went all the way from Los Angeles all the way across the country, and they ended up at the Apollo. Big Mama was not the headliner at all. But yes, when she got up there, I think she did a number, Have Mercy Baby by the Dominoes, which was a popular tune, and she just killed it. And the audience went wild. And the guy who was head of the Apollo, that's where he said, give it up for Big Mama Thornton. He actually coined that term. He's the one that named her that, and it stuck after that. She got a nice write-up in Variety and other places, but I don't think that put her on the national map quite. It was still black music. It was still the Apollo Theater, an all-black audience. So we're still talking about within that realm. Yes, I think she was well-known.
That was Robert Clem in part one of our two-part interview about Big Mama Thornton of the Alabama Wiregrass. And, of course, earlier we were joined by Mike McKenzie of Alabama Public Television. Again, the big program is tomorrow night at 8 o'clock on APTV. And we'll leave you with more of Big Mama Thornton singing Hound Dog. And that is compliments of the 1970 WGBH Boston Public Television Archives. Thanks for joining us today for In Focus, which is a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Carolyn Hutchison, and this is listener-supported Troy Public Radio.
And I say bow wow to you too, honey.